Royal Standley of Oregon Pacific Financial Advisors, offering securities through United Planners Financial Services member FINRA SIPC, guides clients with empathy in discovering and reaching their financial goals, and creates financial plans for clients so they can live their life by design. In these episodes, he relates his expert financial insights and discusses timely topics. Royal strives for excellence and has a passion for sharing his knowledge and supporting his community. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Life by Design with Royal Standley of Oregon Pacific Financial Advisors. Royal, good morning. How are you doing?
You know, I'm hanging in there. Something funny happened last night.
Really?
Yeah. My dog got sprayed by a skunk.
Oh no! Wow.
And the strangest thing is I really had a hard time smelling the skunk smell.
Correct.
My wife and my daughter could both smell it, and I was like, I can smell something, but for some reason it just wasn't as strong. So I was therefore the one that had to, wash the dog repeatedly with soap and vinegar.
Oh, man.
And so I was up later than I wanted to be last night.
Yeah,
dealing with my ridiculous labradoodle that
Well, I understand. I've had that happen, and I can attest when they're sprayed and it's that close. It's not like it hasn't dissipated. It doesn't really smell like skunk as much as you would think. It's a different smell, and it's really weird, and it's not good either. But yeah, when it's that condensed, terrible.
Yeah, so my beautiful, lovely wife is at home with the baby, with the windows open, airing out the house, and hopefully we'll be able to get rid of that smell fairly soon.
Fairly soon, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've got a guest on the show today, and I'm hoping that she has not had to deal with the skunk.
I did not have a skunk today.
Oh, good. Well,
so who'd you bring on the show, Royal?
Well, I'm excited to introduce Julianne Rawlins. Been excited to have her as a guest on the show. I've known Julianne for a few years now, and am just so impressed by what she does for her clients. Julianne works with Cascade, Sotheby's International Realty, which I think is the full title. And I just want to welcome Julianne to the podcast. And we'll just start off, Julianne. Tell me a little bit kind of about your background and what brought you into real estate.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I actually was a dog groomer in a former life, and so your dog story resonated with me a little bit, but luckily I never had any clients that had skunks, so I never had to deal with that. But I have been in real estate officially for about 4.5 years. My husband and I used to do some real estate investing a while ago, had some rentals, that kind of thing. I've always been interested in it. But as my kids got a little older and I had a little bit more time on my hands, I decided that it was something that I was passionate about and I really wanted to go for it. So I got my license, started out as an assistant and transaction coordinator, learned the ropes, and then went out on my own.
Very nice, very nice. And you recently made a change, I think, to Cascade. Can you tell us a little bit about the firm and what prompted you to make that change?
Yeah, so Sotheby's has been around for a long time. They're normally, known for their auction house in New York and things like that. But they do have a wonderful real estate arm, and they have been in Bend and Portland and some other areas, and recently have started moving into Southern Oregon. And they approached me and asked me to join their firm. And as I learned about them and the way that they run their company and saw their beautiful marketing and a lot of those things, I was really attracted to their company and decided to make that move.
Very nice. Very nice. So one of the things I wanted to have you on for is everyone seems to be talking about real estate once again, with all the kind of crazy markets we're seeing across the country, but I think especially here. I think we have some unique features here as far as a almost retirement destination for a lot of people relocating from California. To kind of give us just kind of that 30,000 view overview of what's going on right now in the markets. How are they? Are they still as crazy as they were earlier in 2020 and 2021?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how it's happened. I remember when 2020 hit, I thought, oh my gosh, my business is going to die and I'm not going to have any more clients and the real estate market's going to crash. And actually the opposite happened. It just fueled a lot of change for people. People were able to work from home and they didn't have to commute anymore and they wanted to be closer to family. And a lot of things happened that really created a lot of change in people's lives where they wanted to change their living situation. They needed a bigger house because everybody was home, working and doing school and all these things. And then, interest rates dropped and it just kind of fueled this frenzy. And then here locally, we had the fires in 2020 that also fueled some changes in needs for housing. And so just a lot of different factors have created this, this demand for homes. And so, every state in the country has had appreciation in the last year. There was only 3 states that only had single-digit growth. I mean, some places are seeing 40% appreciation in 1 year, which is just unheard of. And in Jackson County and Josephine County, we've had really good numbers as well. We had 14% from 2020 to 2021, 20% in Josephine County. And in the last 5 years, Jackson County's had 50% appreciation and Josephine County's had 78% appreciation. So some really nice appreciation. There's been a lot of buzz around low inventory, but in reality, homes were coming on the market. They just weren't staying on the market. So, in 2019, this is just in Jackson County, 740 homes sold in 2019. And in 2021, we're already at 820 through the end of September.
So there's definitely some turnover there in the inventory. It's just not staying on the shelf very long.
Right. There were just so many buyers. It was almost like Black Friday for a while. Every time a good house came on the market, everybody was penned up and the doors would open and they would rush to try and get to these houses. And we are starting to see a slight shift the past couple of months. The inventory is creeping up a little bit. For a long time, we were in Jackson County between 200 and 300 homes on the market at any given time, when in 2018 there were like 1,000. And then today, as I looked this morning, there were 586 on the market. So we're starting to see a little bit of a shift there. It's starting to be a few more, it's starting to sit a little bit more. I think some buyers decided to wait it out for a little bit. I've seen some people starting to maybe leave the area because of the smoke and the vaccine mandates and some things like that are kind of creating some different situations where, and this is just anecdotally in my own business, I've seen this happen where there's a few people who are considering leaving the area because of some of these factors.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with that. I have these conversations quite often about relocating out of this place where I think a lot of people have put down some long-term roots and never thought they would move out of the area, but because of the smoke and perhaps the political climate, it doesn't feel as much as home. So it's an interesting dynamic we're dealing with. But are we still seeing the influx of people moving up out of Southern California to the area? Is that something you're still seeing?
Yeah, we do still see California. I've actually seen from a lot of other states too. I've had clients from North Carolina and Illinois and Colorado and other places come here too in the last year or so. Everybody likes to blame California, but we're seeing a lot of people from other areas come here as well. Some for jobs, some for the climate, some to be close to family, things like that.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things, as you touched on, was that kind of change in priorities that people had going through 2020 is that need to be closer to family, that need to have some space where, you can at least get away from the kids if you do have to work from home. I know personally, we moved in December 2019 to a home where I was able to have a home office, and it was such a lifesaver for that first few months while we were out of the office. I can't imagine doing it at my dining room table like a lot of families had to.
Yeah, that was our family. We had at some point all of us at home, and we were all trying to find a little corner in the house that we could have some privacy.
Yeah. So I hear this term buyer's agent, listing agent. Do you have a specialty there where you're mainly working with buyers or sellers, or do you do a little bit of both there?
So some agents do choose to work with exclusively buyers or sellers, kind of depending on their preference. Some newer agents will start working with buyers and then work towards listings. They'll work maybe with a high-profile listing agent to help with the buyers that they have, and then they'll move to listings. I prefer to work with both. It helps me learn the market better. When I have listings and I'm working with sellers, I can help buyers be more prepared to, on how to write good offers. So that, since I know what that's like on the other side, and conversely, it helps on the other side as well. So, it's fun to do both. I like both.
Very nice. Very nice. So when you're working with buyers, what should they be prepared for? Maybe not for what we were seeing earlier this year, but kind of in a more slightly more loose market like what we're moving into right now. What should buyers be prepared for, and what should their thinking be?
That's a great question. And, buyers actually have been kind of put through the ringer in the last year or so, and it's been nice to see that that's shifting a little bit. However, we're not out of the woods yet. The biggest thing that there's a few things I like to tell buyers when they are looking to start purchasing a home is to think about saving. The first thing they need to do when they're saving to purchase a home is to save for the down payment, of course. But I see a lot of people who have the down payment, but they don't have enough to cover closing costs. So it's important to have that as well, and perhaps some funds for a few repairs if the house needs new carpet or it needs paint, or there's just a few things that maybe need to be taken care of that the seller's not willing to do, or that's a personal preference. It's nice to have those funds to take care of that. And so, the minimum down payment for a house is around 3%, and then closing costs can be anywhere from 2 to 5% depending on your credit score and the loan program you're doing, that kind of thing. So you want to have, maybe about 10% of the price saved so that you've got some funds to allow you to buy the home. In years past, sellers would often pay some of the closing costs for buyers with a decent offer. That's really been not acceptable right now. Maybe not acceptable, but not the norm right now, because the sellers have more options on buyers to choose from. And if they've got someone who doesn't need to have closing costs covered, that's the buyer they're going to choose. So that's just important to kind of be prepared to pay for everything that you can. I also recommend that buyers meet with a mortgage lender early in the process to learn what their purchase ability is. Some people may not think they can buy a house, but they may actually really be able to. Or I've also seen people who think they can afford, $400,000, and really they can only afford $300,000 or $350,000. So it's really important to meet with that mortgage lender early in the process and really find out what your purchase power is and what your situation is. And then if you're not able to buy a home at this moment because your credit score is a little low, or you maybe need to save a little bit more, they're really great at guiding you through that process and helping you get ready so that you can purchase at some point.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, and just as a caveat there, one thing I would throw out as a business owner, and I'm sure you've run into this with your business owner clients, is if you own a business and you're not just getting a W-2 paycheck from them, there's often a lot of hoops you have to jump through to get a mortgage. So just be prepared for a somewhat invasive mortgage process there. It's amazing talking to some friends who are just, W-2 employees. They've worked somewhere for 2-3 years or longer, and it's just show us your taxes and you're good. As a business owner, it's a lot more than that. So just from personal experience here.
Yes, if you're self-employed, it's a lot more of a process. But they're doing. I've seen some great programs that some lenders are doing for self-employed people to try and make this a little bit less of a difficult process, because our economy has shifted a lot. A lot of people are self-employed and have kind of less traditional income, and so it's really, really important to meet with that lender and find out what your situation is.
Yeah.
I also get a lot of calls with buyers saying, hey, I'd like to buy a house. Let's go look at homes, but they haven't met with a lender yet. And so it's very important to have your pre-approval ready before you begin looking at homes so that you really know what you're looking for, what price range you're looking in, and what's possible for you, so that, it is really fun to look at homes, and I love that part. But it's important to have all that in place so that you don't fall in love with something that you can't buy.
Yeah. What do you wish sellers would know? Right now it seems like you can just throw a sign in the yard and it's gone in a week, but I don't know if that's always true.
It is not always true. Sometimes you can get lucky, and that can be the case if you've got the right situation. But I have a few things I like to tell my sellers that has really helped them in this past year or so, even with a lot of offers and a lot of options. During the sale process, there's different times where the seller's driving the bus and the buyer's driving the bus. And when you're the seller, you need to make sure you're doing everything you can while you're driving the bus so that you're clear to close and you have a more smooth process. So one thing I advise most of my clients to do is if they've lived in their home for more than 5 years or so, have a home inspection done and repair anything that could be a barrier for your sale. I had a client who had a home that was, it was a 1950s home. It was in pretty rough shape, and she had a home inspection done. Once we got the offers, we said, here's the home inspection, and tell us what you think about this home inspection and what you'd want to have repaired, et cetera. And one buyer changed their price to a lower price. Another buyer said, well, we're going to need $6,000 or $8,000 to cover some of the stuff that needs to be done. And the third buyer said, we love the house, we'll take it as it is. And so it really helped us to sift through the buyers and pick the one that would close. If we would have picked one of those other buyers, we would have had a terrible process, and the transaction would have been really not very smooth. So it's, some people don't think that, they think, well, the buyers will just take it as it is, but that's not always true. And so it's just kind of good to know what condition your home is in so that you can remove any barriers up front. Another thing is you still need to price appropriately. I'm seeing right now especially that homes are overpriced and they're sitting a little bit longer, and we're seeing more price reductions on the MLS because people are like, well, I can just get whatever I want for my house, but it's not actually true. Buyers are very savvy. They watch the market very closely, and they can tell when something's not priced well. Also, take the time to tidy your house up, declutter, put a coat of paint on it. Just have your home looking really sharp. Homes that are in good condition and look enticing to buyers are still getting multiple offers, and they're getting higher prices overall. And also insist that your real estate agent uses professional photos. With the internet, that's the first thing that the buyers are going to see with your home is those photos. And if you've got a toilet seat up and it's not clean, or you've got clutter everywhere and it's just not looking great, you won't get as good of a price on your home, and it may sit for a little while.
The amount of photos on the internet now is just phenomenal there, as far as, going on Zillow, which, is I think what my wife spends most of her time on the internet.
A lot of people are.
Looking at other people's homes, because it's something we never really got a chance to do. But some of those photos will really make the difference of, I've got to see this home. And others are just kind of like, okay, So I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah, a lot of people have really let that slip in the last year and a half. I've noticed, upper end homes with iPhone photos that really aren't being portrayed as well as they could be when they're beautiful homes, and you could tell there's a lot of potential, but the photos just don't do it justice.
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple other things, everyone thinks that there's all these California people coming with cash and that everybody's going to get a full price cash offer on their home. And yes, that does happen sometimes, but also be prepared for buyers with loans. And those are great offers as well and can close without a lot of drama. So, don't hold out for those big cash offers that may not come.
So Julianne, is there anything else you want to cover? I have a couple other questions, mainly about what you kind of think is going to be happening here in the next 6 months to a year. And then, but yeah, I just want to kind of check in with you and see, is there anything specific you want to cover here as we...
Yeah, there's a couple other things that actually I was thinking about as I was preparing for this. If you aren't planning to sell right now and you have a home, you're likely sitting on quite a bit of home equity. And it's important to make sure that your homeowner's insurance is up to date and it's current with your value. I know after we lost so many homes in the fires last year, it just kind of helps you realize some things that need to be in place to make sure that we're being good stewards of one of our biggest assets that we have. And if you have mortgage insurance, if you bought your home a few years ago, you may not have enough equity to have that removed. And then if your interest rate is higher than around 4%, consider refinancing. Rates are up a little bit recently, but they're still record lows, and it's just such a great time to get a good interest rate on your home. And if you do have that home equity, do you want to remodel? Do you want to buy a rental property? Do you want to buy a vacation home? There's just some power you have with that equity now that could really be put to good use for you and your family.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. If you bought your home, 3 years ago, even if you were paying the mortgage insurance, there's probably so much appreciation there in your home value that if you refinance, your equity will be at least 20% in a lot of cases there. And if that's so, you can really reduce down what your monthly payment is. And I just really encourage people to look at doing a shorter term mortgage at this point. Look at a 15 or a 20-year mortgage and get that home paid off much sooner if this is going to be something you're going to stay in for the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did that at the beginning of 2020. We refinanced down to a 15-year, and that feels so good that we could, have our home paid off soon.
Yeah, and probably with the reduction in the interest rate, it really didn't hurt as bad as if you would have started with a 15-year mortgage way back when.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our payment only went up a couple $100, so it was worth it.
Yeah, the other thing I'm talking to a lot of clients about who don't yet own a home is looking at the cost of renting. And right now, for even though the markets are up so much, if we look at, okay, what is the cost of renting right now versus buying? And, looking at a comparable property or home, the thing I really try to stress with folks is you get a mortgage, you're going to lock that in for 15, 20, 30 years. That is your mortgage for that period of time. Interest rates are near all-time lows right now. It might be a few $100s more to buy. You also have the cost of home ownerships and that sort of thing. But the thing I try to remind people about when they look at renting is your rents are going to be going up every single year, especially with some of the legislation that came down that said you really can only raise rates up to a certain point each year. I think that got a lot of landlords looking at that and saying, I need to be much more systematic about raising those rates. I think there's just a fantastic argument right now of saying, let's get into a home. Let's lock in that mortgage payment. Because if I don't, rents will continue to accelerate over the next few years. And as we look at kind of our inventory situation here in the Valley, I think there's a very strong argument to seriously consider looking at getting a home and locking in that low mortgage rate.
Absolutely. I was actually in a meeting yesterday where they said that for the first time on record, rents increased by double digits between August of 2020 to August of 2021. They jumped 11.5%, according to Realtor.com. So, and rents are going up. I think landlords are going to be trying to kind of make up some of the losses that they had in the last little while from the eviction moratorium and some things like that. And I've seen a lot of landlords actually selling their properties recently because the prices are good to sell and they are, not comfortable with the climate of being a landlord right now. And so I think the number of rentals are maybe decreasing overall, and the prices are definitely raising.
Yeah. So definitely a good time to start that search for a new home. Now, I think everyone is probably scarred if they're on the wrong side of 40, let's say, by what happened in 2008. Seeing that kind of complete and total collapse of the real estate markets, is that something that you think could be on the horizon?
So I've been looking into this quite a bit and wondering the same thing myself, because you just keep seeing this incredible appreciation, and you think, where's the stopping point? And there's a couple of things that I've kind of heard over the last year or so that were really interesting to me. And one of them was that 40% of Americans own their homes outright and do not even have a mortgage. And that was higher than I imagined it would be. And of those who have a mortgage, and I had a statistic on this that I found about a year ago, and I couldn't find it again to have the exact numbers for this podcast, but of the people who do have a mortgage, many of them have a good amount of equity. And in 2007, 2008, people did not have equity. They were getting 100% financing, and then they were maybe even more than 100% financing. They were taking out home equity loans to buy boats and go on vacations and things like that. And so a lot of people were really upside down in their homes, and we just don't have that now. People have a lot of equity in their homes. that even before this increase that we've had over the last several years, they've been pretty solid. The mortgage industry has changed drastically since the crash, and they're being more careful with their lending practices. There's a lot of good things in place to prevent that from happening. We may see a slight increase now that the eviction or the foreclosure moratorium just ended. There's going to be some backlog of some foreclosures that will happen. But everything I'm seeing and everything I'm reading from the experts out there is saying that's really not going. That same thing probably will not happen.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to look at there is adjustable rate mortgages, which were a really big thing. 2005, 2006. Of, well, your interest rate is locked in for 2 or 3 years, and then it's just going to float, and your payment will go up, but you can just refinance. That's really a thing of the past. In a lot of cases, we're just not seeing that. So you have a lot of people who have locked in that low interest rate and have really made it pretty affordable. So I agree with just about everything you're saying there is, we probably won't see as much acceleration in price as we have the past year or two. But as far as a big financial crisis type collapse, I just don't see that on the horizon for the real estate market nationally. Yeah. Well,
and another thing that I heard a little while ago was that back when, before the crash happened, there was a lot of home building going on. And there was just building everywhere. And they predicted then that even with that level of building, it would still not meet the demand in 20 years. And here we are, almost to that point, and that amount of building actually dropped off. A lot of people left the industry, and now we're really needing home building to come back. And with materials shortages and labor shortages and all the things that we're experiencing, the building is not meeting the demand. And so we still have a high demand for housing that's not being met. And so that should keep things from crashing too much more.
Well, as we kind of reach the end of our time here, how do people get a hold of you if they have questions about listing their home, or if they have already talked to a mortgage person and want to start looking at buying a home? What's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just Google Julianne Rawlins, and I'm on there. I also have a website, juliannerawlinshomes.com. There's some great market information on there, some information about me. You can kind of click through there and find that there's some guides to buying and selling a home. That's really great information there. Or you can call me at 541-414-3732. The
response I have gotten from them after working with you has just been incredibly positive, and it's just so good to be able to refer people over to you and know that they'll be taken care of. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Royal. I appreciate the partnership that we have and that we're able to work together with these people, and I appreciate being on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for making the time for us and the listeners of the podcast. And I'll turn it over to Eric, and he can wrap things up on what was, I think, a very educational podcast today.
Royal, I agree 100%. This was incredibly educational, and everybody is talking, like you said at the very beginning, everybody's talking about the real estate market. You and I have spoken about this multiple times, and so I appreciate, Julianne, everything that you shared today, even though I'm not in your area. It gives me more insight into what's going on in my area.
Can you imagine doing an audiobook?
Just kind of maybe some of the attitudes out there, which are very, very positive, it seems. So thank you so much for being on the show. And of course, Royal, thank you again for bringing her on the show. And our last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Life by Design podcast with Royal Standley. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Royal comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And like I said, everybody's talking about real estate, so share this one with them. It'll cause a great discussion around the table. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Oregon Pacific Financial Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Life by Design podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The views expressed are those of the presenter and may not reflect the views of United Planners Financial Services. Material discussed is meant to provide general information and is not meant to be construed as specific investment, tax, or legal advice. Individual needs vary and require consideration of your unique objectives and financial situation. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Advisory services offered through Oregon Pacific Financial Advisors, Inc. Securities offered through United Planners Financial Services of America, member FINRA and SIPC. Oregon Pacific Financial Advisors, Inc. and United Planners Financial Services are independent companies.